Welcome to We the Waste People podcast, where two Southern metalheads, a Gen Xer and an elder millennial, discuss the news, break down class politics, and share what it's like to be working class leftists in the heart of Dixie.
Today we'll be talking about the viral FAFO farmer trend on social media. Is FAFO the right approach, or should we seize the opportunity to raise class consciousness? Because don't we all lose when the remaining farmland in America is entirely owned by venture capital and or private equity firms?
Next, we'll wrap up Nancy Isenberg's book, White Trash, the 400-year untold history of class in America, by reflecting and sharing what we've learned about America's class hierarchy. And lastly, we'll end today's show with our favorite and most important segment, Lifestyles of the Looting Class, where we spotlight one absurdly rich oligarch and remind you why we can't have nice things. I'm John Brown.
And I'm Butterfly Screams.
This is We the Waste People podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Hello, everyone. Hello, John.
Hey, Butterfly Screams, what's going on?
Oh, not much. Just really excited that we got our first Substack subscriber. This is Revolution, and it's an amazing podcast that it's similar to ours in that it talks a lot about politics from like a class analysis perspective. And I just love his show. It's through his show that I found some of my favorite scholars that I've been reading lately, like Teray Reed and Catherine Liu. And Jason, if for some crazy reason you're out there listening, thank you again for the subscription.
That is awesome. I'm gonna have to check that out. Let's go back about a month, been right at a month now, I guess, since the FAFO for the Arkansas farmers kind of hit social media and news in general. Right about the same time that happened, a particular influencer, we'll say, from the other side of the political spectrum did not heed Wu-Tang Clan's warning to protect your neck. And that has taken over everything. No longer is anyone talking about the farmers. No longer is anyone talking about releasing the Epstein files. And by the way, release the fucking Epstein files already.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is going back to about 3, maybe 4 weeks ago now. I had seen some videos where the farmers in Arkansas, and it's not just Arkansas, but that was the farmers in Arkansas were getting the highlight at the moment. But many farmers are starting to feel it from all of the wonderful policies that this current administration/regime have enacted. It's having a very negative impact on those people that voted for him. And in a conversation with Butterfly Screams, I was just like, I think this is a perfect segue into what she and I have been talking about, where FAFO is not necessarily the best approach with people who are on the other side. And believe me, I completely understand that the majority of them people ignored us. They did not heed our warnings when we talked about this having a major negative impact on all of us. But, if we're saying that it is a cult, which there's a lot of people out there who have more experience with cults than I do, are saying that it really is, then taking a very defensive, very fuck you approach is not necessarily the right way. And I think this is one of those places where we can try to find a way to get over certain things that have come out because of their voting tendencies. The policies that they voted for are going to fuck them, but they're going to fuck all of us in the long run. Yeah, so this video is, and I don't remember the young man's name, but he was a young farmer out in Arkansas trying to get started. And apparently he'd gotten some backlash from people who were telling him to, he fucked around. Now he's having to find out because he's in jeopardy of losing his farm. And there was some conversation around people telling him about the administration's policies, people telling him about Project 2025. And he was just like, I didn't believe it, or I didn't know about it, or I was told it was leftist propaganda, Democratic propaganda. And so this is kind of a reaction to that video.
Okie dokie, here we go.
He says in the comments, Project 2025, didn't you read that? That's his platform.
Hey, Skylar, my name's Will Westmoreland, and I'm a farmer down in Southwest Missouri. And I just wanted to reach out to you and tell you that I am not an FAFO kind of guy. We probably disagree with each other on everything political, but there's a very specific reason why people are getting upset with you. And I wanted to explain that to you if you'd be willing to listen to an older guy kind of walk you through the process. Now, I'm not an FAFO guy because I know what's going to happen to poor people, the elderly, children, single moms, and over 250 million people every night around the world that go to bed hungry if the American farmer and rancher is run out of business because of Trump's policies. And that's what I want to explain to you tonight if you'll listen to me. I also wanted to let you know I sent you a private message. And if you ever want to get on the phone and you want to talk about the issues that Trump is forwarding that are bad for agriculture, I'd be willing to do that, and I'd be willing to listen to your arguments as well.
Okay, I just want to say that I love that. I really do love that invitation to dialogue. I just feel like that is something that we as a country used to be able to do. It didn't matter, what the issue was, culture war or not, it didn't matter. Like, I just feel like there was a time when someone could disagree and we not just flip out and just decide that we couldn't talk to this person anymore. And I know Trump he's a special case of, just insanity, right? And what he's, brought to the country. But I miss this so much. And I really applaud this guy in his ability to overcome that very instinctual feeling of like, ha, now you're getting what you deserve.
Yeah, and you can tell it's sincere in his voice, Mr. Westmoreland. And I absolutely agree with you. There's a part of me that believes that inability that we have gotten to of not being able to speak to each other is by design.
Oh my God, yes.
That the Epstein class, the elite, don't want us being able to speak to each other, because if we're not able to speak to each other, if we're so mad about whatever, then we're not able to get to the point where we're no longer fighting each other and fighting them. And again, it is, I believe, 100% by design.
Yeah, I love it so much. We need more of this. More of this.
These are the facts, okay? You can look this up on your own, but these are the facts. Rural America uses more welfare than the blue cities do. Rural America needs more help feeding our children. We need more help keeping our hospitals open. And guys like you and I, farmers out there that grow row crops or do agroforestry or raise cattle, we take welfare too. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because we can't control the cost of our inputs. We can't control the cost of what we sell our products for. We got to pay for shipping both ways, as Kennedy said. But the reality of the situation is they were able to instill in us the idea that the government money coming to us was okay and was a good thing, but the government money going everywhere else was a scam or a sham or communistic or socialistic, etc. So it reached a fever pitch finally where a lot of rural people, over 70% of rural farmers and ranchers, believe the Fox Newses and the talk radio. And when they came to you and told you that Trump wasn't going to implement Project 2025 and that he didn't have anything to do with it, you believe that. And you're not alone. All I'm here to tell you is that you were lied to. I'm not asking you to admit you were wrong. I'm not telling you you effed around and found out, because I don't want to see you lose your farm. And if there's anything I can do to help you not lose your farm, I'd be happy to do it. But in the distrust that you built up for government over time, and due to the fact that you didn't think mainstream media was reliable anymore, and you began listening to the news sources that tried to convince you every day that Project 2025 was not a Trump deal, even though many, many people on his campaign worked for Project 2025, they put it together, they helped write it. There was an entire section on agriculture. And in that section on agriculture, they specifically say they're going to cut out programs like this. Then they're going to cut out crop insurance. And Donald Trump is on record, my friend. And Skylar, look this up. Don't take anything I'm telling you at face value. You look it up. That's the difference between me and a lot of people on here. Check what I've said. Make sure I'm not lying to you. But Donald Trump is on record saying that corporate farming is better than small family farms and ranches. And Skylar, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to corporatize agriculture. And I'm not talking about when you and I go out and put together an LLC so that we can get the tax benefits and the protections from liability that come with that. I'm talking about big ag corporations and Wall Street buying up family farms and ranches as they go out of business so that they can turn it into just another investment. In the last 10 years, we've broken every single record in regard to the number of farms and ranches being bought up by investment companies in the United States. And I'd be happy to share all of that data with you. But my friend, I think the worst thing that they did to us in rural America is they convinced us somehow to place the culture wars over our own well-being. And what do I mean by that? Brother, when I was young, you didn't care what anybody did in their bedroom. Gay, lesbian, trans, whatever. That was their life. And the only way the law changed was just to say that you can't discriminate against those people when you're hiring, and you can't commit acts of hate against them because they're different than you and I as heterosexual white men. That's all the law did. And Skylar, did you know that the Southern Baptist Convention, and I was a Southern Baptist for a long time, do you know that the Southern Baptist Convention had its own clauses in their charter that said that abortion was okay in the event that it saved the life of the mother or the child might be deformed? But it was political hacks in the religious Christian movement that came in and politicized the abortion topic in order to get folks like you and I in rural America to turn against it. So I'm not here to tell you FAFO, brother. I know how hard you work every day, and I know what you're trying to do for your family because I'm doing the same thing.
Okay. So any thoughts there, John?
No, I mean, yeah, a few, and it's just like we were talking about. He just spoke on the fact that what they've done is convince people of rural America, and it's not just rural America. It's in the cities as well. It's in the suburbs, but the culture wars, gay people or trans people, it's such a small part of what's going on in society, but such a big focus that we're talking about a trans woman competing in a race in a swimming contest more than we're talking about, these farmers getting ready to fail, getting ready to go under. And there's a reason behind it because they're going to be bought up by these large corporate entities. What he's talking about is absolutely real. Welfare is has been made out for a long time to be seen as this big negative thing, and it's depending on who takes the welfare depends on that it's actually bad, and it's also the only time that it's talked about. Major corporations get welfare. They're just titled differently. They're called subsidies. Most of the major oil and gas industries in this country, those corporations get subsidies. Elon Musk and Tesla get major subsidies from the government. That's welfare. That's the same damn thing as the neighbor 2 doors down getting a little extra money from the government to help feed their children. You don't hear people discussing the billions that someone like, or the millions rather, that someone like Sean Hannity got to help buy real estate. And that's real. You can look that up. Sean Hannity, back during Trump's first term, got money from government subsidies to help himself buy more real estate.
Interesting. I had no idea, but that does not shock me at all. Not even a little. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything you just said. I hate to be the wet blanket here, but I can't help it because I've lived and breathed politics going as far back as I can remember, and I think in this FAFO, I guess, era that we're in right now, I want to be careful not to let the Democrats off the hook, right? The reality is we are here because of the Democrats, because we have a bunch of feckless, weak sellouts as, our representatives that, call themselves Democrats. And it's because they have allowed the wealth disparity to, explode in this country over decades now. Bill Clinton got rid of, I think he cut our welfare program, pretty significantly. And so anyone who I guess is sort of just now waking up and, tuning in and wanting to get serious about change and they still believe in, elections mattering and stuff like that. I can't say that I'm in that camp, but if you are, I just want you to be aware of how the Democrats are themselves a huge fucking problem. And yeah, it's important to look into these people that are calling themselves Democrats, calling themselves progressives, you know, calling themselves the solution to the problem. I urge you to find out, are they taking money, you know, from corporations? Are they taking money from APAC? Are they taking money from just various lobbyists? You know, like do the research, do your homework, because these people do not actually care. They are also part of the elite class.
They really are. Yeah. And I agree with you 100% on that. I guess the only thing I would say is that, you know, if I've heard it put this way a number of times, the Republicans, especially now with it being basically MAGA Republicans, are driving us with their foot on the accelerator all the way down to the floor, straight to the cliff. And the Democrats have us on cruise control at about 55 going to that same cliff.
Oh my God, that's such a beautiful analogy. Oh my God, yes, absolutely. And I know that's hard for, I guess what we'd call, or I would call, a normie Democrat, or just, you know, liberal or whatever, to hear and accept, but it is the truth. They are the elites, and they're just as responsible as these Republicans that have their foot on the gas, as John would say. So that's pretty much my take. And I think I'm very thankful to this guy, and I'm happy to see that it's going viral.
Before we jump into the economic pain of farmers and the vultures feeding on their misery, I feel it's important to lay out some basic facts about current farmland operations. In other words, how much farmland is owned by individuals, families, how much farmland is owned by non-operators, meaning corporations or investment firms, how much of both are rented out. According to the USDA website, a majority of U.S. land and farms is owner-operated, just over 60%. Higher rates of farmland rental are reported in the Mississippi Delta region, as well as the Corn Belt and the Northern Plains. In 2016, the USDA's Economic Research Service published a comprehensive study of farmland ownership. Now, if you're looking at the table we have on the screen, acres owned by farm operators, operator landlords, and non-operator landlords in 2014, 8% rented from an operator, 61% owner operated, 31% owned by non-operated landlords.
So that's close to like 1/3 of farmland, and that's as of 2014. So
that's fucking huge.
Yeah.
Farmland owned by non-operator landlords, 283.4 million acres. Corporations, trusts, or other owners is 10% of all farmland. Individual and partnerships is 21% of all farmlands. Note the data excluded Alaska and Hawaii. So hoping to find more recent data, we clicked on a link provided on the same page, interactive charts. Visualizing U.S. farmland ownership, tenure, and transition brings you to page not found.
So, given what John's about to tell us about venture capital firms buying up land and shares, I think it'll begin to make sense. Could it be that the tariffs and the entree of private equity and venture capital into farmland acquisitions is very intentional? Could it be that the oligarchy, now in control of our government, is purposely making life hard for farmers? Are they trying to make them desperate enough to sell their land because maybe there's a plan? Well, my answer to that is I would say yes, because I can give you two examples of how there are nefarious, I guess you could say, groups, wealthy people, whatever you want to call them, that are venturing into buying farmland. But in Tennessee in particular, there is a company called Ridge Runner, and they are publicly advertising right now that they're actively selling parcels of farmland and rural land in Tennessee, particularly in the Highland Rim Appalachian zones. And so this company, if you dig into this company, you'll see that they have some ties to like a lot of the Christian nationalist movement. They're white supremacists. They're a very shady group. And it's interesting because a lot of what they're doing really seems to tie in with this whole network state thing that's going on with the oligarchy. But anyway, I'll get to that later. But for now, Ridge Runner, let's see, Ridge Runner's site under land listings, they have Tennessee parcels for sale. For example, Brewington Farms, Jennings Creek Colony. They promote development in the eastern Highland Rim of Tennessee with bucolic farmland, rolling hills, and prime land for homesteading and agrarian communities. Let's see, one media report states that Ridge Runner bought a 448-acre farm in Whitleyville, Tennessee, intending to develop it into, quote, an agrihood with estate-style homes, pasture, and farmland amenities. Listings by Ridge Runner are also visible on land sale platforms. I do plan to link to some very in-depth reporting on this particular outfit, and so I highly encourage everyone to check that out. I kind of think maybe we should actually cover it in some future episodes, but anyway.
I'm down.
For now, this aligns with the network state agenda, which for those unfamiliar, there's this whole movement going on amongst the oligarchy, the tech oligarchs, where what they would like to see are these like little libertarian utopias. I guess you could call the best way to describe them are little city states, where basically there's different ways that they can form, and it really depends on, are you in the tech side of things, are you a Christian nationalist? So there's all the various different ways that these communities can form, but their overall plan is to form a community either in digital or real life, buy up a shit ton of land, move there, and then kind of start their own little cities or whatever. And the intent is to be run by like a CEO type figure, and basically eventually petition to be recognized as its own like sovereign little entity, so that it is no longer part of the United States. The rules and laws of the United States of America no longer apply to them, basically. And so anyway, so how does Ridge Runner fit into that whole agenda? Their marketing emphasizes town and country charter communities in Appalachia, appealing to people who want self-determinative rural lifestyle communities. This aligns with the broader trend of ideologically aligned land development, or, quote, safe space settlement. That's hilarious. Anyway, the Whitleyville Farm Project is explicitly framed as a refuge or aligned community for, quote, like-minded, often conservative/Christian people moving from blue states to rural Tennessee, part of what developers are calling a big sort, or ideological clustering. Ridge Runner's efforts mirror tactics seen in another aligned community, or enclave development projects, acquiring farmland, subdividing it into residential lifestyle lots, marketing it to ideologically minded buyers, and building an agrarian or self-reliant themes. You know, I just want to quickly say, I personally would love to live in a community like this. I'm not down with the whole Christian, extremist side of it. And I'm, obviously I don't believe that they should be operating outside of the rules and laws of the United States of America. I'm not down with that part. However, just the idea of like these little rural communities where we all anyway, all right, that's just me. Okay, so that's what's going on in Tennessee. Now, there's another example of something similar happening in Solano County, California. And I urge everyone to check out More Perfect Unions reporting on this particular project. So basically in Solano County, California, a private development group operating as Flannery Associates quietly bought up tens of thousands of acres of agricultural land in southeastern Solano County. The purchases were secretive and sparked alarm because much of the land sits near Travis Air Force Base, leading to inquiries from federal security offices and members of Congress about who was buying the land and why. In August of 2023, a group called California Forever, which was the operating arm of the Flannery Associates I just mentioned, unveiled an East Solano plan describing a walkable new city and proposed a county ballot initiative to convert agricultural land to urban use. Luckily, that ballot push was withdrawn. Local farmers, environmentalists, county officials, and a coalition called Solano Together have opposed the plan, citing water scarcity, ecological harm, traffic and infrastructure costs, lost farmland, and democratic concerns about a privately driven attempt to create a city. Company tactics have included litigation. Flannery sued some landowners over alleged price fixing, stealthy land buying through subsidiaries, community outreach, and after the ballot withdrawal, strategic pivots such as proposing a shipbuilding manufacturing park and exploring annexation deals with nearby cities. So how does this fit into the, I guess you could say, network state model? Well, it overlaps with network state ideas. California Forever resembles one practical route to creating new planned communities, or quote, new cities that could host alternative economies, governance experiments, or tech-centric ways of life. Objectives that echo some network state rhetoric about creating physical territory to match digital communities. The acquisition of large contiguous land parcels and the ambition to build a self-contained city and concrete moves toward assembling territory first, then political and economic systems. So, yeah, that is the current state of Solano County. Again, the More Perfect Union video does a great rundown on everything that happened with this. It's incredibly fucked up. So yeah, when I see that farmland data is being scrubbed on the government websites, I cannot help but think about the broader ideological movements happening within the Trump regime, or that's fueling the Trump regime, and that's the Christian nationalists, that's the oligarchy, and they all have one goal in common, and that is to dissolve the United States, get rid of democracy, and create their own little city-states run by CEO type figures. I guess for the Christian nationalists, it's going to be some kind of preacher. I don't fucking know. But what I do know is that this is wrong, and it's scary, and people need to know about it. John, that's all that I have for that.
Man, yeah, that's concerning, and it pisses me off because there's nobody's talking about it. Not in large enough capacities that it's mainstream, right? And if you think about all the implications, they're literally trying to do away with the U.S. as we've ever known it. For good, for bad, they're literally trying to make their own little nation states so that they can have full control. And fuck that.
Yeah, and in these little there's so many different names they go by. There's network state, there's freedom cities, which, on the note of freedom cities, Donald Trump released like some video back in 2023 where he talked about how he was going to use federal lands to establish freedom cities. He was going to open the frontier and unleash American innovation. Well, that video was totally inspired by this movement happening under the surface, which is moving towards a more libertarian fever dream of basically just dissolving the federal government entirely, I mean, I guess that's the first step. And then creating all these new like little city states, and they're all self-governing and they're all privatized, and it's just, guys, it's crazy. It's crazy to think about.
Damn.
But anyway.
All right. So focus back in for a moment on Arkansas farmers and acre investments. Key point, 64.2% of Arkansas farmers voted for Trump. 1 in 3 farms or more could be closed by spring of 2026. State's agricultural sector projected to lose $1.14 billion this season. Number has ballooned by another $300 million by the end of this month. That's as of the end of September 2025. Rice prices are at a 8-year low. Congress approved the budget reconciliation bill, or the big beautiful bill, earlier this year, providing relief to farmers. However, it won't cover the projected losses farmers will face this year, said Brandy Carroll, Director of Commodity Activities and Market Information for the Arkansas Farm Bureau. Carroll, a former rice farmer in Weiner, Arkansas, has decades of experience studying agricultural policies impact on farmers. She said some One Big Beautiful Bill provisions won't take effect until late 2026, which is too late. That's literally a year after they're having their problems. All of the challenges that Congress passed in budget reconciliation, they don't really do anything for another year. It takes the complete marketing year of every crop before they determine the actual market price of the crop and the reference price. Those payments aren't made for a full year until the end of the marketing year. That means October or November of 2026. Ryan Loy, an extension economist for the University of Arkansas System Divisions of Agriculture, states 259 farm bankruptcy filings from April of 2024 through March of 2025, and 2025 filings in the first quarter have outpaced those from first quarter 2024. Even worse on a national level.
And these are just the tariffs alone, right?
Yeah.
Like the impacts. Oh my, wow.
Yep. And it's going to impact prices and availability of produce at grocery store.
Oh, on that note, can I just say, like, I don't know that we grow coffee here in the United States. I don't think we can climate-wise, but I just want to say the coffee that I normally buy and I've bought my whole life, I was able to buy last year at about $12, $13 a pound. I am now paying 19 and some change for that same pound of coffee.
Holy shit.
Yes. Like I said, I think the reason for that is because those coffee beans are coming from, other countries. But I just want to give a great example of just how much these tariffs are impacting the things that we're importing.
Jesus. Have you seen any summaries as to the benefits of it? I mean, and again, I know I'm reaching here, but are there any real benefits that anyone could say, hey, here are the benefits from these? I know it seems like it's all pain, but here's the other side.
No, I mean, I will say that, like, when the conversation about tariffs first arose, going back to his first administration, I wasn't entirely angry about it, because I think that when strategically used, they can be helpful, right? They can. And obviously they were, because Joe Biden continued a lot of the tariffs that were put in place by Trump. That's just a fact. I know people probably don't want to hear that, but that is fact. Go look it up. However, this tariffs on steroids thing we've got happening right now, no, I do not see the benefit. No, I do not see that they make sense in any way. In fact, I think I saw the other day that Trump is talking, not that I think he is ever going to do this, for real, about some kind of, what do you call it? Basically kind of giving the money back in some way. He's going to write us all some checks because we've made so much money off the tariff. Basically I don't know if you would call it a stimulus check, but it's like a stimulus check, right?
Yeah.
And it's just so silly to me. And it's why would you do that? You could have just never tariffed the shit in the first place. You know what I mean? and it just anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
no.
seriously agree that I doubt he would ever do it, even if it's factual, even if that were true. I don't see them doing it. So let's move on to Acre Trader. So farmers partnering with Acre Trader, and just let me back up here. Acre Trader is an investment firm. They invest capital with farmers or for farmers. They're basically a loan entity. Is one of the many things they do. Venture capitalists can go in, give money to to the group of Acre that's involved in Acre Trader, and then of course they expect a return, and they will run it like a Fortune 500 style business that is traded on Wall Street. And there's a lot of negative that comes with that. But farmers partnering with Acre Trader may face increased financial pressure due to rising land prices driven by corporate investment, making it harder for new or small scale farmers to access land. Additionally, reliance on corporate structures could lead to reduced autonomy for farmers and potential negative impacts on local economies as profits may not circulate within the community. Negative impacts of partnering with Acre Trader would also include increased land prices, operational risks, limited control. So just a quick overview of the long-term impacts for farmers partnering with Acre Trader: corporate consolidation, dependency on external funding, impact on local economies, and environmental concerns. These factors highlight the complexities and potential drawbacks of partnerships with farmers and investment firms like Acre Trader.
So I ask again, is this intentional? Like it really seems between the tariffs and now you've got private equity or in these investment firms coming in and basically, acting like freaking vultures because, the farm industry is hard. Like it's not exactly a moneymaker. And so it just seems all of that seems so exploitative. It seems so intentional. It seems like they are literally trying to make life as hard as possible for farmers, all so that the land can be bought up by private interests and potentially will become part of some network state down the line. That's how I see this. And
So I've got an idea in my head what it looks like to the consumer in the grocery store. But what do you think that looks like? What do you see the negative impact to the consumer across the country when they go to the grocery store and they're buying groceries, the for all the farms, so let's say all the farms, let's say 75% of the farms have been bought up by 2, maybe 3 large investment firms. What is the possible negative impact that you see to everyday people?
I mean, obviously the cost is going to skyrocket because that's just what monopolization does, right? And the fact of the matter is they can jack up those prices as high as they want. There's nothing that we can, as consumers, can really do about it unless we, take some sort of collective action.
Yeah.
And who knows? I mean, I guess that can look like a bunch of different ways, but um, yeah, I mean, honestly, what comes to mind when you ask me that is the movie 2073. Like, it's
Oh,
just another element of, a world where the elites have completely seized control of all the facets of life that allow us to survive at these very basic levels, food, land, um, housing. It's just, they're going to have their little special economic zones, which is another word for network state, and they're going to have their fancy little cities or whatever. And if you can't afford to live in them, well, then you're just living on the outside. You're living in a fucking dumpster or
yeah.
what used to be a mall, kind of like the main character of the movie. You know, you're just scraping by. You're trying your best to just survive off the scraps that the elites throw out of their, you know, fancy cities that they live in.
Yeah, some of the puzzle pieces that like I keep putting together in my head are that when you've got these large corporations that are running the entire farming industry in the country and eventually the world. And then those have so much influence, as we saw in the last episode, and we'll see in this episode, that they have with the court systems and which laws are passed. And they're not going to be laws that are going to benefit the American people. They're going to be laws that benefit these corporations. And I think about, the ability to just do away with any regulations, whether it's regulations towards workers and safety, or whether it's regulations towards what's put on, what they're using as fertilizer or what they're using as insecticide, and doing away with all those regulations. And then that just ends up, on the consumer's plate. And your children are now eating produce that has been grown in these factory-based farms, factory-style farms where there's no regulation and there's no oversight on how they're getting the most money for these crops. And now, are you truly safe to eat that corn on the cob that you've got on your plate? Are you truly safe to eat the lettuce that you have in your salad, or whatever the case may be?
Oh yeah, for sure. All right. I am ready to move on to class discussion if you are.
Let's do it.
Okie dokie. For today's class discussion, we're wrapping up Nancy Isenberg's book, White Trash, by summarizing the epilogue. We'll reflect on the impact of the book by sharing what we learned, the ways in which we relate to the history as white Southerners, and how it's changed our politics, if at all. I want to remind listeners that this book was published in 2015. So if you're wondering, where's the Trump analysis going to come in, that's why. He was not yet part of the conversation, I guess you could say. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started reading on the epilogue. John?
American democracy has long masked class divisions with empty symbols, relying on the fiction that a president represents the whole people. Leaders have often been elevated as patriarchs or warriors, from George Washington to Ronald Reagan, while ties to corporate power, like McKinley's loyalty to Big Steel or Mitt Romney's defense of corporations as people, are downplayed. Such theatrics create a false sense of unity while concealing the enduring reality of poverty. Left out of the national story are tenant farmers and shack dwellers, whose lives reveal not mobility but social stasis, and whose existence runs counter to the triumphalist myths of war victories and political pageantry.
Class in America has always been defined not just economically, but physically and culturally, with poor whites marked as dirty, unworthy, and disposable. Employment myths conceal the reality of a, quote, reserve army of the poor, forced into the hardest, lowest paid work, while resentment is manipulated to reinforce racial hierarchies, as Lyndon Johnson once noted. Across centuries, the white underclass has been labeled with an evolving lexicon of slurs. Waste people, offscourings, lubbers, bog trotters, rascals, rubbish, squatters, crackers, clay eaters, tackies, mudsills, scalawags, briar hoppers, hillbillies, lowdowners, white N-words, degenerates, white trash, rednecks, trailer trash, and swamp people. These names depict them as slothful, rootless, physically scarred, and even defective, as though poverty were bred into their bodies. Such language has served to naturalize inequality and justify their exclusion, embedding class separation at the very core of American political and social life. Okay, so what did you learn, John, from reading this book?
Oh, wow. I think one of the things that again, and I know I've talked about this before, but one of the things that just I keep going back to is the mythology of this country, the propaganda that's been used um, to create a connection to a nation that didn't really care about anyone other than the elites. Um, Poor white people have been pawns in this war that we more times than not didn't realize we were a part of. We were brought in back in early colonial days to shield elite people from a large group of enslaved Black people. We've recently been brought in to protect the elites of the Epstein class. And, they've separated us on all those things we talked about earlier. I think one of the other things that it's done for me is I've always really hated those monikers of hillbilly and white trash, and now I don't give a fuck. Um, think of me what you will. I'm a working class person. I've worked my ass off over my life. But even if someone hasn't wanted to work as hard, that's okay too, because why? Why do we have to work so fucking hard just to live? Why do we have to trade the most valuable commodity that every one of us has, and that's time, for the things that they think we should trade it for to be able to breathe, to be able to just sustain a decent life. You know what I mean? I got to trade time away from my wife, away from my boys, or have had to do that in order to try to give them a good life. And it blows me away that that so many of us have been conditioned to chase that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I think about all the time is why we as a culture just accept that productivity is like the only marker of our value in the world. I'll never understand that. And it's something that you hear like a lot when you talk to, I guess, people that lean more right, is like you'll often hear them say things like, well, I can't fault him for making a lot of money. That means he worked, he earned it, or she earned it, or whoever. And it's like, there's this
But
obsession
God, I get
with
so pissed
like,
off at that.
yeah, it's just, I'll never understand that obsession with working to acquire like material things and the importance that people place on it. It bugs me, and it's something that I think about a lot.
And
I wish we could.
9 times out of 10, they didn't actually fucking earn it.
Oh yeah. Oh
Most of
yeah.
them have gotten it from their parents.
Yeah. It's so puzzling the way people just think elites somehow earned where they're at, and it's just yeah. All it takes is just the slightest little bit of like digging in to find out that no, the vast majority of them did not. So anyway, so for me, I think my main takeaways from this book is that, or what I learned is that it's actually okay to care about the well-being of poor white people. I know that's hard to do, um, given the bigotry that often accompanies poverty, because of class. But at some point, we've got to rise above, and because if we just keep it, exclusively focused on race as a way to improve society, we're just trapping ourselves into no real change, no real progress at all, because we're going to all be too busy in our corners screaming at each other. So somebody's got to rise above at some point. And to that end, I think it's also totally valid to question that absolutist approach that a lot of social justice and progressive liberals take, where if you have even the slightest question about say an identity group, that it automatically means you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a transphobe, you're a whatever. That in itself is a very classist view to take, because you have no idea where these people are coming from, especially if it is a poor white person. The likelihood is that they never received much of an education, or the education they did receive is probably no more than 6th grade, or something ridiculously low. They probably never left their hometown. They have not had any real exposure to a life outside of themselves, which is what is required because by nature, as human beings, we are tribal, we are apes, and we tend to want to naturally associate and affiliate with like people. So anyway, I just find that overreaction or reactionary mindset to poor white folks can be a sign of classism in itself. So and I think it's pretty obvious at this point that moral scolding about your superiority to ignorant people is not helpful. And radicalization and cult experts will tell you that you're never going to reach people by treating them that way. So yeah, it's hard not to just really dive into my experiences in academia, because it was such a, oh my God, it was just such a transformative experience for me.
And that's why I don't think you should. I don't think you should skip over it. I think you should talk about it, because for someone like me who has never been in that world, I didn't go to college, even though I probably tend to be more liberal than you are. I don't understand. There's some things I'm missing because of the lack of experience in academia, whether it's actually working in that world or going to school and being taught by other academics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it does help bridge the gap. And I think there is a big gap there. And the problem is that there are people out there who demonize those in academics. And I don't think academia should be demonized. I think those in academia should be celebrated. But there also needs to be a conversation about what you were just talking about, where, look, I've spent my life in a very small community of people. That small community was literally my mom and my 2 brothers were the only consistent community I had up until 22, 23 when I met my wife. 22 years of age, that is, not 2022. So that's all I knew, is what they had, what I had learned from being around and with them. Now, that's not to say that's all I knew, but that was the majority of it. I knew a lot from moving around a lot. I met a lot of different people. But let's take trans people, right? And I consider myself to be an open person who's willing to try to get to know anybody. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to say the right thing, or I'm not going to say the wrong fucking thing when I'm around somebody who's trans. It doesn't mean I'm against them, but there's a lot of things I don't get and I don't understand. But if you immediately, because I make a mistake in the way I say something, you immediately go and you ridicule me, or you tell me I'm a dumbass, or I'm out of the club simply because of that mistake, then there's a good chance I'm going to be like, well, fuck you. I'm walking away.
Yeah.
You're not giving me a chance to become an ally. You're not giving me a chance to become someone who is a part of your team.
Yeah, no,
Does that make
agree.
sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And on the note of like the trans conversation, like I highly encourage people to go check out I can't stand Ezra Klein, but I will give him this. This was a good episode of his podcast with oh my gosh, I've already forgotten her name. She's the trans lawmaker from Delaware, I believe. I want to say her name is Sarah, but I'm blanking on her last name. But anyway, she's the trans congresswoman from Delaware, and they had a very honest, frank discussion about, like, you know, trans issues and, you know, what it's meant to her to be the first trans woman in Congress. And, you know, and she goes into the
Sarah McBride. Sorry, I
Sarah
had to look it up
McBride.
real quick.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, she's from Delaware.
She even talks about, like, the dangers of, you know, venturing into this, like, absolutist approach of, you know, you're either 1,000% with us or you're against us. You know what I mean? And she understands that the vast majority of the population, like, these ideas around, like, trans people, their lives, their existence, like, that the vast majority of people, they're just now hearing about it, right?
Yeah,
And she understands that it's a new thing, and you're not gonna win people over if you don't allow room for conversation and questions to be asked, right?
Yep.
And so anyway, I just very much appreciated her conversation and her grace and her willingness to just open up the floor and allow for conversation and dialogue to take place. Good faith, of course. There are bad faith people out there, bad faith actors that will, you know, just totally do everything they can to destroy, you know, trans people and all that stuff. But good faith actors, absolutely. And thank you, Sarah McBride, for that podcast. I hope everyone goes and checks it out. I will link to it in the description. And so other things I learned are that there are scholars on the left who can critique the current social justice strategies, and they're actually not white. In fact, none of them that I've found are white. So, yeah, I think that's another issue or area that deserves a larger discussion, an open floor to discuss, for example, like DEI. I mean, it's not, these issues are not black and white. And to me, that's kind of the irony of the whole thing is, like, you know, the left is all about, you know, smashing all these binaries and ending them all. Yet in practice, like, it becomes very binary. You know what I mean? It's like, you're either with us or you're against us. You're either in the club or you're out of the club. You know, like, it's crazy. It just, to me, it just doesn't make any sense.
Oh, yeah, and just to put that in a different aspect, take it away from you know, let's take it away from LGBTQIA. Let's take it away from black and white people or black and brown people. Let's put it like this, right? So I've been following a lot of people on the left on TikTok recently, and I came across a guy not long ago from Alabama. His handle on TikTok is Alabama Fella, and he mentioned the DSA. DSA is Democratic Socialist of America. I don't know enough about them. I might like them. I might not. I won't know until I do some research and talk to some of these folks. I kind of think I might like them based on what I've heard so far. But until I have the chance to dip my toe in the water and ask some questions, I'm not going to know. But if somebody on that side of it says, hey, you're either all in with DSA or you're all out with DSA, then more than likely I'm going to end up being fucking all out. And you're not giving me a chance to find out.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is, I'm sorry to say it, but there is, like, a segment of the left, the very broad left. And, you know, side note, I want to say that that's something that I hope you and I can accomplish, John. And that is, anyone who listens to this, to see just how diverse the left is, just how, like, what a diversity of thought exists, right? And so the media tries to really, like, dumb it down into something that, like, it's this very radical, you know, group think that happens, you know, and it's not like that at all. In reality, it's not. We're all different. We all come to it with different viewpoints and life experience and whatever. So I really hope that that's something that people can take away from our podcast, is that, you know, we're all different. It's not about just this hyper partisan like way of seeing things. But anyway, so I think that's all that I want to share about what I personally took away from this book. John, I'm curious, in what ways do you relate to the history as white Southerners?
Man, well, I think the easiest thing for me to talk about there is that we were always, if you're basing it on the American economic pyramid of, you know, lower, middle, and upper class, I think you could break that down and go in and look even at larger subgroups inside that. And, you know, from the time that I can remember being a kid, roughly, excuse me, I think roughly 79, 80, somewhere in there. When my kid brother was born, we were in Texas. We had just moved from Mississippi to Texas. We were, God, we were at best on the poor side. We were lower class. Um, and the lifestyle that goes along with that, there were times, you know, and it's kind of an inflow situation because of how often my mom and dad split up and got together. I lived in currently live in what would be considered a trailer or modular home. But when you look at it on the inside, it looks nothing like what most people close their eyes and picture. But there was a time when my mom and dad had split up, and we lived in Texas, and I lived in a trailer that literally had holes in the floor. We had adopted this stray cat for a very short time that would come and go through the hole in our bedroom.
Oh,
Yeah, right. And I was embarrassed as fuck of that growing up, and I didn't like to talk about it for a long time. I wouldn't even consider moving into a trailer because of the stigma that I had in my head, of being that it represented being poor. And if you ever showed up at my property now, you would be like, this motherfucker is a hillbilly. He's poor white trash. And at this point, I no longer care. If you're gonna judge me over it, you're not somebody I need in my life.
like I
Um,
told you, just wait till you see my place, dude.
but I think it's, you know, that's where I would say I'd relate, is just that's how I grew up. Um, I've been called many of those things, mostly by other white kids. Growing up, I did spend, I don't know why, but at an early age, I started like paying attention to the whole black and white thing of our society. And I just started paying attention to a lot of differences. And uh, I spent roughly 2 years at a school where I was the minority. The majority of the kids in that school were African American. I was one of maybe 10 or 12 white kids in the school. Um, and I think I've talked about this in the past, because I was poor growing up. Other white kids who maybe were a little more affluent than me would make fun of me for anything and everything, you know, from freckles to my last name to you name it. But the kids that I went to school with when I was in the predominantly black school, you know, there were only a few things that they would make fun of me of, and shoes were one of them. Shoes were a big pride for that culture at that time, at least the kids I was around. So that was like one of the few things they made fun of me for. Otherwise, it was, you know, they were easy to get along with, and they weren't, you know, I guess mean is the way to put it. You know, you hear everybody say, "Well, kids are mean," and most of the African American kids that I met weren't. And that leads me to a story that um, the school was known, and of course, this is junior high, was known to have had two, I guess, gangs, if you will. I don't know if you'd really call them gangs or not, but that's what everybody said. And there was this one kid that was part of the gang, and I bumped into him in the hallway, and these were packed hallways, right? And it was a shoulder check. It was unintentional, but because of how crowded it was. And he's like, that's your first warning. You get 3 strikes and then you're out. And I was like, fuck. And then a month or so later, bumped into him again. And he's like, that's two. And man, all I could do is just be like, I stressed the hell out of it. Well, then one day I was sitting outside of lunch, and at the time I was getting free lunch, or reduced lunch or something. But for whatever reason, I'd already used up somehow the reduced lunch privilege that I had, and so I could not eat, and I didn't bring lunch with me. And he happened to be outside, and he looked at me, and goes, "Why are you out here? Why aren't you in there eating?" And I said, "Because I can't. I don't remember exactly what I said, but my reduced lunch is already out." And he looks and he goes, "So you're like us?" I'm like, "Well, I don't understand. What do you mean?" He's like, "So you're poor?" And I was like, "Yeah, we don't have a lot of money." And he goes, "All right, then." He's like, "You start fresh. No strikes against you." And I don't think I ever bumped into him again throughout the rest of the school year, but nothing ever happened, because I was poor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's weird how that worked out, but yeah, I don't know if I've answered your questions, so to speak, but ultimately I've grown up poor white trash the entirety of my life.
Yeah. No, that answers it. Yeah, for me, honestly, this book felt like my history, honestly. You know what I mean? Like it was, as a white person born in the South, I have my life experience, which is that I come from a working class family. My mother and father did not go to college. They had very working class jobs. But then I can look back also to my ancestry and know that this book is my history, because and on both levels of the class hierarchy, because my dad's ancestry, they came from Acadia, right, in Canada. They got kicked out by the British, fuck the British, but anyway. And they ended up in Louisiana. And from what I can tell, doing my genealogy research, that side of the family, my father's line, seemed to do well once they got to Louisiana. Obviously, it was very hard, and they went through their own periods of history where they were discriminated against. But financially, they seemed to be okay. Whereas my mom's side, particularly my mom's maternal line, I mean, they like as far back as I can trace it, like we've been in the South. We came through like North Carolina, down through Georgia, Alabama, and in fact, I could find no evidence that they ever owned slaves or anything like that. But I do know that they were poor and they were sharecroppers. And in fact, I want to read a short piece of text from the book that when I read it, I immediately called to mind some pictures I have of some ancestors of mine. And then I'm going to share those pictures so you see what I'm talking about. So on page 199 in the book, it's in the chapter on eugenics. It says, all in all, the rural South stood out as a place of social and now eugenic backwardness. Tenant farmers and sharecroppers wandering the dusty roads with a balky mule seemed a throwback to 18th century vagrants. And so with that in mind, I just want to throw up on here pictures of some ancestors of mine. And so this is my third great grandparents, and they were sharecroppers, and you see them in front of their, I guess that's a big, I'm blanking. John, what's the name of it? Corn?
Yeah, looks like a corn
Big
stalk.
stalk of corn. Yeah. So yeah, they're standing here in front of a giant stalk of corn, carving out their existence as sharecroppers. And then also, this is my third great uncle, great grand uncle. I don't know how you say that, but anyway, this is him standing there with a mule. And again, like that line in the text says, a place of social and now eugenic backwardness. Tenant farmers and sharecroppers wandering the dusty roads with a balky mule. Like, these are my people, right? I have literal photographic evidence that these were my people. They were poor and they had it rough. They did not have it easy. And they were from Alabama, by the way, if you were wondering where these pictures were taken, rural Alabama. So
Oh, wow.
anyway, so I thought that those pictures would be a good way to kind of help visualize why I feel so connected to this text, and why it meant something very personal to me, that she was basically describing the experience of some of my ancestors. And so, I own that history and I'm proud of it. And I'm sure some of them, or I know that I have ancestors that were racist, and even one of them had a picture of George Wallace in his living room, while living in project housing, no less. So yeah, that's just that's just how it goes for poor white folks. They, yeah. So anyway, that's just something I thought might be interesting for you to see.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you sharing that.
And
And I'll add this, since you mentioned that aspect, the George Wallace picture. We're not responsible for our ancestors. I taught both of my boys to the best of my ability about the atrocities of our country's past and why it was wrong. And I taught them to see people for people, not for the color of their skin. Um, and I can promise you today, if you asked either one of my kids if they felt guilty about our history's past, or if they felt guilty about our as white people's history in relation to slavery, they're both going to look at you like you're a fucking idiot and tell you no. What they do feel is an obligation to make sure that they can do everything they can to let it not ever happen again, to make sure that they're not being oppressive to others.
all right, our next question, in reflecting on the book, is how have our politics changed? Did you want to go, or?
No, go ahead, go first.
I would say that my politics have changed, in that I now frame everything through an entirely class-conscious lens. I definitely want to put more effort into listening and understanding others rather than assuming the worst about them, that they're bigots or whatever the case may be in the moment. And most of all, just recognizing that so often these political issues, these social issues are so complex, and we tend to just reduce them down into these black or white binary things, that are just not accurate. Humans are messy, they're complex. And I wish as a society, as a culture, that we would do better and just allow room for the nuance and the discussion often necessary when trying to wrestle with issues. So yeah,
Agreed.
that's basically how mine have changed. How about you?
I don't know that necessarily they've changed a lot. I would say that a little more class focused than before. I can't say that by much. I think I was already leaning pretty heavily to being class focused. Um, so I can't say a lot has really changed. Um, I think again, if anything, it's opened my eyes to, like you and I talked about early on, the negative aspects of the DEI. If you're not careful with it, how it is actually a hindrance to true growth, as opposed to something that actually helps. And again, for me, it's kind of like the laws that are put into place for equal opportunity, equal housing. Those laws are put into place for a reason. They had to be put into place, but the problem there is then, is anything in society really changing? Or are you just still managing society through a bandage or a crutch, if you will? So I think if anything has changed, it's just that my perception on those aspects of our society have broadened. Um, I'm still very, very aware of the different issues that we have in our greater society here in this country. But I think I have taken more of a focus towards classism and where that's driving those other issues.
Awesome. Well, thank you for indulging me and reading that book. I know it was definitely of a more intellectual sort of nature and take on politics, and I'm a total nerd for those sorts of things, so I can't thank you enough for like, taking that journey with me, and basically us having our own little, like, I guess, book club.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be good if we do it again on some other books. I saw a creator today on TikTok, and it was awesome because it was a African-American creator this morning, young lady who talked about if you really wanted to understand American history, she recommended 3 books. The second book she recommended was the book we just reviewed. I thought that was
Awesome.
really fucking cool.
That is so cool. I'm so happy to hear that. Awesome. All right, moving on to our Lifestyles of the Looting Class segment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we can't have nice things. So, John?
All right, y'all. Today's oligarch and not well-known Scooby-Doo villain, Leonard Leo. Let me start by saying that in researching this villain of all Scooby-Doo villains, Mr. Len Leo, as he's often referred to, made me really want to say fuck it and walk away. Researching Leo has made me nauseous, and I tell you, this was one of those times that confirms ignorance really is bliss. Just he can fuck all the way off. I will say that he can fuck all the way off. Jesus.
This ought to be interesting.
Yeah. Go
Like
ahead.
I said, I've done, like, I know who he is, and I know, vaguely why he sucks, but I'm excited to hear more.
So it starts back in the mid. He starts his journey back in the mid '80s, coming out of college, and where we are as a country today with our politics, with our judicial system, is very, very much in large part contributed to him. If I were going to try to summarize all the articles I read and the impact that Leo has had on our government and our society, is that he has had a ridiculously disproportionate sized hand in the shaping and reshaping of our judicial system. He's been involved in undermining the people's will since the mid to early '80s. So let's start with how he made his fortune. So to try to keep to our standard measure, uh, when I first started researching Leo, I wasn't sure that he was wealthy enough to qualify as an oligarch. So with a quick search on my preferred internet search engine, I just asked the question, does he qualify? And the answer I got back was yes. Leonard Leo can be classified as an oligarch due to his significant influence and control over political and judicial appointments in the U.S., primarily through his substantial financial contributions and a network of conservative organizations. His actions reflect the characteristics of oligarchy, where power is concentrated among a small group of wealthy individuals. So, in keeping in line with our standard of measurement for the oligarchy of the day, I'll start off by saying that Leonard Leo is not listed on Forbes' list of wealthiest people. But please save your pity for his ass clown of a self until we have finished the segment. Now, his net worth has been very hard to pin down, depending on the source used. It ranged, in one source, it said $7 to $10 million, up to his, excuse me, up to as high as $1.6 billion. He received the $1.6 billion from Bar Said, who ran and owned the Chicago electronics manufacturer Trip Light. Said had long donated to conservative and libertarian causes, from George Mason University to the climate skeptic group, the Heartland Institute. And I'm getting slightly off topic, and I'll get back to Mr. Leo real quick. But Said decided to put Leo in charge of his fortune recently, and again, that fortune being 1.6 billion. What was then, and that's recently known as the largest political donation in the country's history. Again, that was one single donation of $1.6 billion that Leo is now
God.
in charge of. And he did so through a series of complicated transactions that Said, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name. It's a Jewish name. It's S-E-I-D. So Said or Said. Said transferred ownership of his company to a newly created entity called Marble Freedom Trust, of which Leo was the sole trustee. So Leo's impact on the American judicial system. These are bullet point highlight segments from the article ProPublica, which again, that was every article I found referenced this article from ProPublica called "We Don't Talk About Leonard Leo," the man behind the right Supreme Court supermajority. In the show notes, you will see several articles attached from my research on Leonard Leo. Leo's involvement in transforming the judiciary beyond the Supreme Court was significant. He worked with the Federalist Society, influencing conservative judicial appointments. Leo's influence extended to appointing judges who aligned with conservative views on gun control, abortion, and LGBTQIA+ rights. The Federalist Society, founded by Leo, became a powerful network influencing conservative judicial appointments. Judges attending a week-long conference in Maine hosted by George Mason University's Anton Scalia Law School made rulings reflecting conservative stances on issues like gun control, birth control mandates, abortion, LGBTQIA rights, and voter ID laws. The conference aimed to promote a free market, anti-regulation agenda among young lawyers, judges, and state attorney generals. Leo's power and vision were evident in securing donations and influencing the selection of cases and judges. Leo's networking strategy involved hosting dinners, connecting justices with major donors, benefiting both parties. Leonard Leo's influence shaped the conservative movement and transformed the courts. Leo organized retreats of Supreme Court justices with prominent conservative donors, i.e. Thomas and Crow, and facilitated private trips for Justice Alito and Scalia, funded by donors. Leo also helped Ginny Thomas secure a subcontractor position with Kellyanne Conway in 2012, paying her at least $25,000. Leo claimed to have obscured Ginny Thomas's role to protect her privacy. Reverend Rob Schneck befriended several justices, praying with them and socializing outside the court. Leo's influence highlighted the advantage of personal connections with Supreme Court justices and advocating for change. The Federalist Society, under Leo's leadership, shifted its focus to state courts, allocating a significant portion of its budget to this initiative. So, summarizing his impact on the working class in the South, Leonard Leo has played a significant role in shaping the U.S. judiciary, as we've talked about, particularly through his leadership in the Federalist Society. He has been instrumental in the nominations, again, of several Supreme Court justices, including Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. Let's not forget, though, that he did work on the Senate committee's hearing and nomination of Clarence Thomas. This influence has led to conservative majority on the court, which has made rulings that many argue negatively impact working class individuals and communities, particularly those of us in the South. His impact on labor right and social issues, the conservative judicial appointments have often resulted in decisions that favor corporate interest over labor rights. For instance, rulings that weaken union power and limit workers' rights can disproportionately affect those of us working class in the South and southern states, that is, where labor movements are already vulnerable. Additionally, the court's stance on issues like healthcare and reproductive rights can further marginalize low-income individuals who rely on these services. The impact on economic and social consequences because of Leo's influence on the conservative courts. These policies supported by Leo and the justices he helped appoint have contributed to a broader agenda that critics argue undermines social safety nets. This includes efforts to roll back regulations that protect workers and environment, which can lead to economic instability for working class families. The focus on a conservative legal agenda may also exacerbate existing inequalities in the South, where many communities struggle with poverty and limited access to resources. In conclusion, Leonard Leo's influence on the judiciary has significant implications for us working class people, particularly those of us in the South. His role in reshaping a conservative legal landscape has led to decisions that many of us believe undermine labor rights and social protections, ultimately affecting the economic well-being of vulnerable populations. Many people like myself did not realize how big of a role that Leonard Leo played in all of Trump's nominations in his first term, and that's at the lower court level as well. So yeah, that's Mr. Leonard Leo.
Yeah, isn't he kind of a big deal when it comes to Project 2025 too?
He is. He very much is a big player in the Project 2025. Again, he had a lot of nonprofit organizations that he then donated money from them to his own for-profit organizations, which helped raise a lot of money for Project 2025. Yeah, dude is as someone was quoted in that article from ProPublica. One of the protesters that wound up protesting at a house that was bought and paid for very quickly by Leonard Leo said she scribbled in chalk on the street, "Google Leonard Leo." I highly recommend everyone Google Leonard Leo. All righty, boys and girls, we appreciate you joining us. Again, I'm John Brown.
And I'm Butterfly Screams.
And this has been We the Waste People podcast. That is all we have for today. We hope that you're learning something. And most importantly, realizing just how much the Epstein class hates us all. As a reminder, all the sources we use to compile the information discussed in this episode will be linked in the show notes. So please check them out. Currently, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Substack, Blue Sky, and TikTok by searching @WastePeoplePod. Join us in 2 weeks as we continue to explore class in America and call out the oligarchs destroying our country.
See everyone in 2 weeks.